Hey everyone, it's still Freaky Friday here on a Liquid Lunch. Thanks so much for still joining us here on hour two of this wonderful television program. Again, you can watch it every Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. with the great John Tobacco. It's my privilege to fill in for him today here on a Freaky Friday. And joining me, it's always good to talk to a fellow academic. And right now, joining us is Dr. David Eisenbach. He is a historian, a professor at Columbia University, and a former Democratic candidate for public advocate. And he joins us here today on a Freaky Friday. Professor, how are you?
How you doing, Fernando?
It's great to talk with you. David, one of the things that we all know that Tuesday night was almost like a disaster. I'm a big sports fan, pro wrestling fan as well. I like this drama and just downright circus, but not everybody liked that environment. People wanted to get, a more relaxed and rational discussion. It didn't seem like we got that. We heard some conservative feedback about the debate on Tuesday night. What say you when it comes to, again, you identify as a more, progressive type of individual. What were some of the takeaways from Tuesday night's debate?
Well, I just think that we got more of the same, the kind of name calling, the divisiveness that we're just seeing not only between the two candidates, but the general public. Anybody who was expecting some sort of informed policy debate has been living under a rock for the past 2 years.
Well, I mean, Dave, to be fair, I mean, listen, and I talked about it earlier during the show. I've always had a fondness for Chris Wallace. I mean, I don't apologize. I watch Fox News a lot, but I also watch other cable news outlets and other online platforms. I was really disappointed in Chris Wallace. I look at him as, listen, your job as a moderator is pretty much you're a glorified referee. The referee's got to maintain control in the ring, on the football field, on the basketball court. It seems like Chris Wallace just let this get out of control.
I don't know. I just given the tenor of both the president of the United States and the former vice president, I don't think there was much controlling either one of those guys. Plus, thanks to the Presidential Debate Commission, which is really a candidate protection commission, the rules are set so that the moderators can't be fact checkers. They really can't check the candidates. So the rules are designed so that we don't really have debates anyway.
Well, listen, it was very difficult to sort of overlook the fact that it became chaotic within maybe 10 minutes in. Yeah. And for those of us that I don't think it really changed anyone's mind on this past Tuesday. I think if you were a fan of the president, a supporter, I think you went in saying, hey, I think the president did well, sort of like a boxer. You go into the ring, you land punches, you connect. That's how judges score fights. And I think,
as historically, most debates have no impact whatsoever.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I felt that Joe Biden did not embarrass himself because we've seen sort of a cognitive decline for the former vice president for weeks now. But it seemed that if you're a fan of Joe Biden, you said, well, okay, I feel fine voting for him. I don't think this really thread the needle too much based on their performances.
I think only in the sense of because Trump and his surrogates have been attacking Biden and questioning his mental ability, the fact that he was able to stand up there for an hour and a half and handle himself against Trump helped a lot in kind of dismissing a lot of those conspiracy theories.
Sure. Certainly, Dave, the news broke overnight that the President of the United States and the First Lady, along with Hope Hicks, a White House staffer, tested positive for COVID-19. Yeah. We've just received news that Joe Biden and his wife have tested negative. So, again, my thoughts and prayers to the President and the First Lady, along with Hope Hicks. But, David, one of the things, and again, you're someone who identifies as a more progressive individual. I don't know about you, but I've just been disappointed looking at some of the vitriol on social media, sort of in this celebratory mood. I mean, listen, I don't like a lot of elected officials. I disagree with them, but I would never wish COVID on Bill de Blasio, who I despise, or Governor Cuomo or anybody. I just think it's really childish. I think it reminds us why this polarized political climate is so toxic.
Yeah. And it also reminds us on why 2020 is such a nightmarish year, because if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. If you were to tell me that Joe Biden gets diagnosed with this thing in a few days, I wouldn't be surprised. And this is the nightmare scenario. It's not so much if either one of these guys gets incapacitated before the election, okay? Both parties have rules. They can designate successors. The problem will be if they die after the Electoral College meets on December 15th, and then it gets thrown into a divided Congress to decide on which votes get counted, which votes don't get counted, Ultimately, this would wind up in front of the Supreme Court. We're talking about America on the brink of a constitutional crisis. And that's just one of the factors going into this fall that just keeps any sane American awake, regardless of property.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you bring up a great point about a potential constitutional crisis, because leading up to, again, we're hoping the president recovers. To the best of our knowledge, he's not showing any serious symptoms. But we know that, again, constitutionally, should the president not be able to fulfill his duties presently now, it would go to the vice president. No news yet on Vice President Pence, whether or not he's tested positive. Let's hope not. But then, of course, then it gets into the semantics, right? Because now we start looking at constitutionally, the Speaker of the House would succeed the presidency. And then I think that would create an even more polarizing political climate, with ultimately perhaps Nancy Pelosi succeeding to that position if these nightmare scenarios happen.
Yeah, it gets even stickier, right? If, let's say, Joe Biden were to win in the Electoral College, but then dies before he takes office, then potentially the election could be thrown into the House of Representatives. And according to the U.S. Constitution, the vote is taken by a majority of state delegations controlled by the Republicans. So we could have Joe Biden winning in the Electoral College and the popular vote, but then losing in the House of Representatives. Again, right? There are all these possibilities in a year that has seen so much insanity. I wouldn't discount any of it.
Well, it's something to keep an eye on for sure, David. And I just want to ask you again, being fellow academics, we know that there seems to be this sort of ongoing reputation for decades that academia is sort of the haven for the left and for liberals and for progressives. And as someone who is a center-right person, I tend to be libertarian in some issues. I can be progressive on some, but I tend to be more conservative. Why is academia so pervasively left? And oftentimes, I've had some colleagues in academia that sometimes are downright crazy. I've had academics wearing Che Guevara shirts on campus. And listen, I'm the son of a Cuban mother. That's not a good idea to wear that in front of me, because I'm going to roast you. But where do you think this comes from, David?
I think there is a kind of a culture of the left that's been around for, probably about 70 years. The rise of the new left in the 1960s. These young academics who kind of took over, these baby boomers took over in the 1970s and 80s and really haven't left. I myself am from the kind of the center left, let's say. But the fact of the matter is, I am of the liberal mindset where I like to hear a diversity of opinions and thoughts and views in the classroom and in the academic world. But you're definitely right. It does skew to the left.
Absolutely. Oftentimes it's very scary. David, on a more local level, we know that New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo have clashed really and have been at odds about police reform as it pertains to the NYPD. I don't know about you, David. It seems that, this is the message the president tried to convey on Tuesday about these liberal cities, these blue cities, not being properly run. And I think it's sort of perpetuating the argument that there's a lot of chaos and disorder when it comes to these democratically run cities. And again, look no further to the disaster that's become the Big Apple under the guidance of Bill de Blasio. How do you see this?
Well, I ran with Sal Albanese as an anti-Bill de Blasio Democrat in 2017. We were
good for you.
We received everything that has happened to New York City. We foresaw this massive expansion of the budget has now saddled New York City taxpayers with a budget hole. Bill de Blasio, marrying himself to the real estate industry, has built a house of cards economically in the city, completely ignoring the collapse of small business, and now he can't do anything about it. Right now, there's trash all around the streets around my neighborhood in the East Village. The city is in free fall, and Bill de Blasio is not one to rescue it. On the other hand, we have Andrew Cuomo. His big solution to the problem with the police is calling for task forces all around every city to form its own task force, including New York City, right? That's a coward's way out. Andrew Cuomo, you got a solution, come up with a solution, put it on the table. Don't be screaming about how Bill de Blasio isn't forming a task force, because we all know the task force there, it's just smoke and mirrors.
It really is disappointing listen, I've grown up here in New Jersey my whole life, but I've crossed the river thousands of times, and I've always had an affinity for the Big Apple. It's really despicable what's happened, and it's heartbreaking seeing businesses close down permanently, seeing garbage in the streets, seeing Times Square. It breaks my heart. But David, well said. Thank you for joining us here on the program, and certainly your insight is greatly appreciated. Look forward to having you back on Liquid Lunch here on Biz TV and Facebook Live as well.
Anytime, Fernando.
Thank you, Dave. Take care. Folks, listen, I think the professor said it best when it comes to how disappointing New York City has become, and really sort of the potential constitutional crisis that could be upon us leading up to Election Day. So we'll definitely see, folks, as we'll be right back here on a Freaky Friday. We continue right here on Biz TV and Facebook Live.